Good evening from the Sun News Network studios in our nation's capital. I'm David Akin. Thank you so much for watching. Tonight we start with a midsummer taking of Canada's political pulse. Poll numbers you will not see anywhere else except right here from our friends at Abacus Data, and Abacus CEO David Coletto joins me now. David, good to see you. And the basic lay of the land, who's in front, who's in third, hasn't changed. But there are some little tweaks from the March numbers the last time you were out in the field.
That's right. We were out of the field just before spring started. Now we're these numbers were taken just as summer was beginning. And the Liberals...
And after the by-elections, which is important
Half
too.
of the poll was done after the by-elections.
Right, June 30th was
the
by-election.
So we've got, it doesn't necessarily reflect any momentum that the Liberals or the Conservatives would have picked up out of this, but I think the results suggest the Liberals still have a small lead over the Conservatives nationally, but they haven't picked up anything since March. Their numbers are exactly where they were in March. It's the Tories. We've seen a small pickup, a meaningful but small pickup in their numbers.
3 points is
meaningful. These are the numbers among all voters that we surveyed. So you can see 19% said they're undecided. The Liberals have a 3-point lead. Again, the Conservatives up 3. The New Democrats and Liberals are up 1 because, again, that drop in both bloc support, interestingly, in Quebec, and undecided. If we look at committed voters then and we roll out those undecideds, it's 34 Liberal, 31 Conservative, 23 for the New Democrats. So not a lot of big changes. Some change in Quebec, which we'll get to, but pretty much somewhat status quo. And despite even Northern Gateway coming out, we oversampled in British Columbia. Not a big swing away from the Conservatives at this point.
Well, and this is, you mentioned British Columbia. Let's talk about the regional numbers, because I think as we're 15 months away from this election, and the parties are definitely gearing up strategies, putting resources in play, they are going to play each region of the country very differently, depending on where they're at.
And we're seeing very different battlegrounds in each of those regions. So if we look at British Columbia, for example, we show basically a three-way race there. The Conservatives have a slight lead over the Liberals and the New Democrats. You can see almost a third each for those parties. In Ontario, it's really a two-horse race between the Liberals and the Conservatives, with the New Democrats trailing well back in third. Very similar to the results we were seeing through the Ontario election in terms of Liberal, Conservative, New Democrat. And out in Quebec, a very different picture, where our poll numbers suggest the Liberals have gained. These aren't similar to some of the other polls we've seen that has the New Democrats doing better. Nonetheless, the Liberals are very, very strong with non-Francophone voters in Quebec, and it's close, tied pretty much between the New Democrats and the Liberals among Francophone voters, which is good news still for the New Democrats. They can still win a lot of seats with that, but Justin Trudeau's looking pretty good in Quebec right now.
And even within those three regional ones, and as you said, you oversampled in BC, Ontario, and Quebec, we could probably still break it down to have regional variations within. And Quebec, you just mentioned, was, I'll bet it's Liberals like crazy on the island of Montreal. It's Conservatives probably doing relatively well in Quebec City, and the NDP everywhere else.
Well, what's interesting is where the Bloc is, right? They now have a new leader, somewhat controversial leader. They're down 10 points since our last poll. Now, our last poll in March was done right at the beginning of the provincial election when the PQ was still leading, right? That was before their collapse in that election. So the Bloc has taken a hit, and right now it seems, it's somewhat surprising maybe to some people that the Liberals have actually benefited a little from that Bloc drop.
One last thing, we want to get into the leaders, but before we do that, where is the Liberal support coming from? And this was something that we shouldn't probably be surprised about. It's not just coming from one party, it's coming from a couple.
Yeah, as the party in the middle, right, as Kathleen Wynne likes to say, that activist center, they're pulling from a quarter of past NDP supporters say they now support the Liberals, and almost 20% of past Conservative Party supporters now say they support the Liberals.
And this is what I find fascinating for the way the Conservatives are marketing against Trudeau, is that 1 in 5 individuals who voted for Stephen Harper a few years ago now ready to vote for Justin Trudeau. Those creatures exist out there, and they're a threat for the Tories. Let's move on to this approval thing, because this is also where there's really more of an issue for Tom Mulcair.
It is, and you can see the green is, as we always do, the positive numbers for each of the leaders. The reds, they're negative. This is, again, similar to another NDP leader we talked about in Ontario, Andrea Horwath. Lots of people have a neutral impression of Tom Mulcair. If you look at his numbers in Quebec, he's super popular.
Right,
For 52% positive, it's crazy, even in our numbers. Outside Quebec, though, lots of people actually tell us they don't even know enough about him to have an opinion. They're neutral and unsure, meaning Tom Mulcair, even though he's been leader now since, March 2012, he hasn't been able to introduce himself to large parts of the country, particularly in BC and in Ontario. Lots of important seats for the New Democrats. My numbers suggest maybe this summer he still has to do a little more work introducing himself to non-Quebecers.
Tom Mulcair today was in northern Manitoba. Tomorrow he'll be in Edmonton if you want to go and see what this Tom Mulcair guy is all about. All right, David Coletto, thank you so much.
Welcome.